Camden
You don't want to do
says...
super chats? You want to do those later?
Let's do it later.
Okay.
He says, I don't understand the atheist viewpoint. Can you help clarify some things? Yes, we can, Forrest, and I can answer some of your questions, but only from our perspective. We don't speak for all atheists. So go ahead and ask us a question, Camden. You're on AXP.
Awesome. This is my first time ever calling you guys, and I've watched you for a long time, so I just wanted to say that before I started. But
good to have you.
I really do enjoy y'all's channel. I've listened to it for a very long time.
Thanks, man.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you.
So I think my first question really, I believe in evolution. I believe it exists. I mean, I heard your talk earlier with Ray, and I'm not gonna say the word I believe. I know evolution exists.
Yeah.
However, that being said, evolution, its whole purpose is to basically reproduce. It's to try and optimize your offspring and constantly, recreate itself. And, that being said, like you look at, I'll look at it a little deeper. You have DNA, you have animals and, bacteria, and all of its purpose is to constantly just, seek food and reproduce. So I'm curious, doesn't that innate urge kind of complement some of what God says in like the Bible? And I'm not a Christian, but I can at least say like there's something moving in there. There's an innate like response, like a stimuli that's being reached. Like, why is life doing that if not being told to do it?
So I would say the biggest thing, I think I get where you're coming from in terms of like the Bible is like, reproduce and multiply and be fruitful or things like that. Is that kind of what you're driving at?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I would just say the difference that I would draw here is that there is no edict to reproduce. If life didn't we look back to the very beginning of life, 3.8 billion years ago. What we classify as life, the way that we define life involves reproduction, right? There is no set single sentence dictionary definition of life in biology. What we do is we classify what is and isn't alive based on 7 different characteristics, one of which is reproduction. Now, does that mean that every single living thing has to reproduce, otherwise it's not alive? No, of course not. It's kind of a general principle. And what we can say is like 3.8 billion years ago, if life started, if you had the beginnings of a very, very, very early cell, because even bacteria are remarkably complex compared to what a very basic cell could be. If it didn't reproduce, we wouldn't know about it. It wouldn't be around today. There would be nothing left of it. It would just have gone, right? Yes. And so the thing with reproduction and evolution is that evolution is the logical outcome of reproduction. Something that I always talk about whenever people want to talk about, whether or not evolution is true. The fundamental concept to understand like neo-Darwinian basic evolution is that DNA exists. There's different flavors of different genes, and that different genes are better suited in life in different environments. So you could have all the best alleles to be an amazing freaking penguin, and you're gonna die in the Sahara Desert. And you could have all the absolute best alleles to be a flounder. You could have the best flounder alleles, and you're gonna die in the Amazon rainforest jungle. You know what I mean? Like that. So like, there's just different environments are better suited for
unless that flounder has a smartphone.
Exactly. But like that's the whole point. If you know that DNA exists and that you get it from your parents and that it comes in different flavors and that those different flavors are better for different environments, then evolution reasonably follows. And that's why, when we talk about evolution, a lot of people think that it's all about survival. It's not. You're right. It is about reproduction. And I would say all of that, as pedantic as it sounds, to just say, I understand what you're driving at, that this kind of sounds like something that might sound somewhat religious, but there's simply no need for that baggage. This is the logical conclusion.
No, I'm not adding
Sorry, go on.
Right.
Camden.
Well, I'm not trying to...
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, please. I was just asking you it sounds like you wanted to clarify something, Camden. So go ahead and clarify what you were going.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm not attempting to add any sort of religious baggage. I'm a deist. So I do believe there's a God that created everything. And I do prescribe to different religious, moral beliefs. but very particular on those because I won't agree with everything that the Bible says because a lot of it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Like such as slavery and racism and genocide and wars and famine. I don't agree with any of that.
Infinite punishment for a finite crime. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Terrible. It's terrible. So, I guess what I'm really trying to understand is, and I understand a lot of, people will ask this question. And it's one of those sort of annoying, redundant questions, but it's a question that's always bothered me. And it's, how can there be something without nothing? And, we look at evolution and we look at the way that it's been able to adapt. And we say life is just so spontaneous and, it came from non-living things, but how did it just, you can't just say it just came from a non-living thing. And I understand there's this slope, and I've read The God Delusion, and, it takes millions and millions and billions of years for it to get up that slope. But for it to even be able to do that, like I would look at, just for an example, and I don't want to be too long on this call, but I want to respect your all's time. Yeah. But you look at like a software engineer, if he's coming up with, artificial intelligence that learns on its own, and you put it through the software and it learns and it's able to do whatever you ask it to do. Maybe you ask it to do something as simple as lay bricks, and it comes up with the perfect strategy of laying bricks and how fast you can lay them. It's able to, figure this stuff with an algorithm, but you have to put that algorithm in there. You have to give it a goal. You have to give it an objective. Like there has to be preset functions and domains, but why don't we give that same sort of, weight to the life that we're living? Like, I mean, grass didn't just grow, right? It came from seeds, and those seeds had to grow and adapt to those environments. And that's why there's different types of grass everywhere. But at the end of the day, it all came from seeds. And why is it that a seed does what it does? And why does it, and I'm not saying it wants to do, but if we are following a sort of, Charles Darwin, Richard Dawkins, we're following a Richard Dawkins belief that, there's a selfish gene in there. It's wanting to do it on its own. Yeah. Then we are saying that there's a certain, go ahead.
Well, I would just say what you're doing here, what you're talking about, is you're kind of jumping around between the beginning of life and modern life, and building this flimsy bridge between them and saying, well, this bridge is too flimsy. It doesn't make any sense. How did we get to seeds that want to grow into plants? And I know what you mean by want. I get that. I'm not, but like just for the other people listening, we don't literally mean the seeds have desires, but I know what you mean because I use the same language all the time. No. But like you're looking at things today that are remarkably complex and the result of a lot of evolutionary history, and saying, how can we get here? And it's very similar to when people say like, well, the human eye is so remarkable and so perfect, and how can random chance make this? As if
it's
things
not random
went
chance,
from
though.
Right. I understand. I'm giving you a little bit of a straw man here just to kind of like help summarize things. Forgive me. I'm not trying to be uncharitable with your point. But like it's the way that you're presenting this argument. It's as if you were saying, we went from a worm with no eyes all of a sudden to something with a complex eye like ours, and not all the steps in the middle. So when you talk about where life came from,
that's not really what I'm saying, though. I'm saying why does the worm want to do what? What gave us the function? What gave us the? I mean, let's say the earliest piece of life ever. And I hate to interrupt you because I really do respect your show, and I hate when other people do it to you.
You're good,
but I'm really trying to clarify this point for you, because if we say the earliest piece of life, and depending on which view you believe in, which, I can sort of agree with the one mostly with like asteroids having molecules in it that might have had carbon life in them, right?
Oh, that's just
where's that carbon?
That just kicks it further back in the past.
Yeah, it is fair to say that like I would say it is fair to say that like the major building blocks of the four major macromolecules of life do self-assemble and have all been found in space. We found all 5 nucleotides on asteroids. We found sugars. We found fatty acids. We found tons of different amino acids. We need for life on Earth today uses only about the life on Earth today only uses about 20 amino acids, sometimes a couple extras in very special circumstances. But like we only have about 20 amino acids. There's over 500 amino acids that we've identified, and they've found them all over space all the fucking time. And so, like, in terms of getting life started, all of the pieces of life naturally occur. And all you need is for those pieces to bump into each other in the right order, which, given some time, is bound to happen. And what's really interesting to me is just how quickly life began once it was able to. The Earth first formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and the first around billion years of that was the Hadean period, where we had what was called the late heavy bombardment. The Earth was just getting pummeled all day and night with rocks from space as it was clearing out its orbit around the sun. And so the whole Earth was this molten hellscape. No life could have existed on that planet. The second the planet cooled, we get life. Like as soon as it's possible for life to be here, life pops up within just a couple 100 million years, remarkably quickly. That, to me, is strong evidence that this is a very possible natural process, given the fact that it didn't take millions or I should say billions and billions of years. Remarkably, relatively quickly, life gets started here.
And my guess is Camden's question then is, why is that so? That points him...
Yes.
I'm guessing, Camden, to there being some sort of purpose behind it, because why does the universe, such as it is, have amino acids in the building blocks of life be so easily or so rapidly convert into life? You're saying the fact that these materials exist and that the physics and the chemistry are such that it can happen is, for you, pointing to life. And I think this is a kind of the anthropic principle, like that, looking back as the fact that we are here, the fact that life is possible is, for you, evidence of an intelligent designer in some way, right? Of a deistic God that set this all in motion billions of years ago because we have life. And I guess our position is we can't make that extra leap. If the universe weren't this way, we wouldn't be here asking the question. Is that where you're going, Camden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not expecting, an answer, like the, but I think you really have described that to me in a good way. And I think I'm sort of starting to see eye to eye with, the atheist viewpoint, which is, I'm not trying to ramble here, but funnily enough, I literally had watched a video and it kind of made me think a certain way. Have you guys ever heard of the non-stamp collector?
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't matter. I watched one of his videos and then I watched another one. I was like, damn, this stuff's, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I just decided out of nowhere I was going to call you guys. And sure enough, you guys just started your live stream. And I hadn't listened to you guys in like a year. So it was pretty awesome that
it must be God
randomly
leading you.
Like,
Jesus is real, Camden.
I can't help it. I can't help it. There has to be a meaning to that, right?
Camden, I guess our position is that we recognize that the universe exists in such a way that life develops from non-life. We don't know when it happened. We know that it happened because here we are. And we don't accept a supernatural cause for this kicking off. And the difference between, I think, the theist perspective and the atheist perspective is that rather than say, I know how it happened because magic man live in sky, magic man make thing happen, right? And we're like, we don't know exactly how it happened, but we know it's here, and we're going to keep on investigating to figure out the mechanism. Forrest has got a book, though.
Yeah, well, I was gonna. Do we have time? Johnny, you're the host today. Do you have time for me to read a thing very quickly?
Of course.
It's only about a paragraph.
For you, Forrest.
So this is something that I think is really cool, and it's just something that I remember when I was very first starting on my first degree. This is something that I read, and it meant a lot to me, and I think it's pretty neat. This is from The Mysterious Universe by James Jeans, and he writes, "Standing on our microscopic fragment of a grain of sand, we attempt to discover the nature and purpose of the universe which surrounds our home in time and space. Our first impression is something akin to terror. We find the universe terrifying because of its vast, meaningless distances, terrifying because of its inconceivably long vistas of time which dwarf human history to the twinkling of an eye, terrifying because of our extreme loneliness, and because of the material insignificance of our home and space. 1/1,000,000th part of a grain of sand out of all the sea sand in the world. But above all else, we find the universe terrifying because it appears to be indifferent to life like our own. Emotion, ambition, achievement, art, and religion all seem equally foreign to its plan. Perhaps, indeed, we ought to say that it appears to be actively hostile to life like our own. For the most part, empty space is so cold that all life in it would be frozen. Most of the matter in space is so hot as to make life on it impossible. As space is traversed, the astronomical bodies continually are bombarded by radiation and a variety of kinds, much of which is probably inimical to, or even destructive of life. Into such a universe we have stumbled, if not exactly by mistake, at least as the result of what may probably be best described as an accident. The use of such a word need not imply any surprise that our Earth exists, for accidents will happen. And if the universe goes on for long enough, every conceivable accident is likely to happen in time. It was, I think, Huxley. He wrote, I think. I hate that. But it was, I think, Huxley who said that 6 monkeys setting to strum unintelligently on typewriters for millions and millions of years would be bound in time to write all the books in the British Museum. If we examined the last page which a particular monkey had typed and found that it chanced in its blind strumming to type a Shakespearean sonnet, we should rightly regard the occurrence as a remarkable accident. But if we looked through the millions of pages that the monkeys had turned off in untold millions of years, we might be sure of finding a Shakespeare sonnet somewhere amongst them, the product of blind play of chance. So he says there at the end, if you look at all of the pages they made, you wouldn't say, wow, this one page was an accident and crazy and remarkable. You would say, of course this page exists. Look at all the other pages. And you can see that if you Google the Library of Babylon, they just have every possible random permutation of the English alphabet, and you can go on the Library of Babylon's website and type in anything you want and guarantee they've already got it. They've already typed it out because it's every random permutation of every letter in the English alphabet. And that's exactly what James Joyce is saying here, or James Jean is saying here, is that, in the universe, we see a planet like our own, and we're like, fuck, this must be magical and special. Look at the universe around us. But at the end of the day, you could say the same thing about wherever you were born. 70% of the earth is covered in water, and only like 1% of that water is fresh water that's available to drink. If you're born on a patch of arable land next to a river that you can drink out of, you would surely think this spot was made specially for me because look at the rest of the world around me. It's terrible. But that's how it is in the universe. We look at the universe around us and we think, wow, Earth is magical because it's the only place with life. But when we see the sheer scale of this place, the fact isn't it's freaky that this is a planet with life. The freaky fact is that there aren't bazillions more that we found so far. And that's a whole other question called the Fermi paradox. But that's I think that's important.
That Kurt Sagat video.
Yeah.
You what?
I said I've watched that Kurt Sagat video.
Oh, I didn't know they made one. That's great.
Yeah. There's some good stuff there too. Camden, last thoughts.
There is some good shit.
Last thoughts.
So I realize most of this conversation has been focused mainly upon determinism. The monkeys and the typewriting, and eventually everything will come to be. Or, if you knew what every brain, reptilian brain, human brain, animal brain, mammal brain, and you could see them all, and you could see what your mother had for breakfast when she was 9 and what she ate, before she had you, you could probably determine what the next words in my mouth are, because you can keep going all the way back to the native days when my ancestors decided to go across a land bridge or not. But, and I hope I haven't lost you there, but no. I'm saying from a non-deterministic viewpoint, we can see, and I apologize, I'm gonna combine Eastern and Western philosophies for a moment, but if we have like the 7 deadly sins, and even things such as the Bhagavad Gita tell us to stay away from things like eating too much or sleeping too much, or, these sort of passions, fulfilling these desires, and that if you continue to fulfill too many of them, you're left with a life of unfulfilledness. Despite fulfilling all your desires, you're unfulfilled. So doesn't this also kind of point to the idea that maybe there's something a bit more than what meets the eye? Like that there isn't just this recipe to humans, that it takes more than what we think?
I don't think so. I don't think it points to it. I think what it points to is that there are certain biological constants throughout human history, and that we need food, we need water, we have a brain that has developed in the hunting and gathering and the various other agricultural skills. We've developed it in such a way that we can, despite our fragility, physical fragility, our brain is able to overcompensate for that, or compensate for that, and be the most successful organism besides, bacteria and ants and stuff, to sort of dictate the terms of our future, the conditions under which our species exists. And the fact that we see it throughout different cultures is merely a reflection of the fact that I don't care if you're in Papua New Guinea or if you're in, Walla Walla, Washington, you've got the same needs. The brain follows certain patterns. Speech seems to be a function of it, maybe an offshoot of various neurological developments over the last, couple billion years or million years. And our ancestors have arrived at the same problems, right? You eat too much, you run into certain problems. You do nothing, your body decays, or your muscles decay, you're unable to function. I think it's just, here's the thing. If there became a radical change in human biology and human neurology and such, I think we would see radical changes in virtue and vice. What constitutes virtue, what constitutes vice? But there hasn't been one. Since the earliest times, even our other primate cousins, we're subject to the same possibilities physically and consequences. And so that's why it just seems to be a universal truth. We talk about these objective morals. I think they're tied inexorably and to the biological reality. That's how I see it, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep any more of y'all's time.
Hey, you're great, Camden. Thank you so much for being.
I absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
No, I was just going to say I've absolutely enjoyed talking to you all. I've always wanted to call you. I didn't want to call you when I was 13. You would not have wanted to hear the mess I was going to spill.
Maybe not.
But
we're happy to have you now.
I wouldn't want to talk to me at 13
much
either.
Older.
Yeah. Oh, that was insufferable.
Now that I've matured a lot more, I feel like this was a great didactic conversation.
Camden, you're great. You take care. We're going to let you go. Callers
call
out
back again
there.
sometime, though, for real.
Oh, please do. Callers out there, this is a focused call. This is what we're talking about.